Good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's newsletter. I wanted to get into an oldie but a goodie when it comes to topics that I've covered. This is new for you. I've been in the digital marketing scene for almost 20 years. Actually, next year will be my 20-year anniversary working in digital advertising. And when I first got into this environment of advertising in the digital or internet, the first thing that I actually helped with was Google Ads. If you're an old head like me, it was initially called Google AdWords, and we helped local businesses manage their advertising or really get started on it because many who I was working with back in 2006, 2007, they just did not have any understanding of really what the Google ad environment was and how it helped them. Obviously, that many were doing newspapers and phone books, even those were a thing back then. Obviously, it's no longer that. And pretty much everybody is aware of Google Ads. It was interesting. I was at my BNI meeting a couple weeks ago, and I had asked the question, like, how many of you, and there's about 40 local businesses that are in the Bucks County area, how many of you are actually running Google Ads? And I think one or maybe two people raised their hand. So again, it's why I'm there. I'm trying to help these people really just understand why Google advertising is important. And again, it kind of shows to me like just the apprehension that some of these businesses have when it comes to advertising in here. So this article that I put out, it really just goes into, do you need to have somebody managing your Google advertising for you? You can read through this. I'm going to do some of the highlights and then kind of set the story for why I put this together. But when you look at what Google Ads is doing, it's helping you reach the people in the Google environment. But it's really here to help support everything else that you're doing. So your SEO efforts, your social media, if you're doing geofencing or digital advertising, you want to make sure that you're capturing people when they do a search on Google. So when you look at the Google environment, the Google ad environment obviously is there to make sure that you're being found. Now, the challenge is that it costs money to do it, right? And if you're not familiar, it's a cost per click environment. So when somebody hits a keyword and they go to your website, it's deducting dollars from that. One of the things, and I wrote it in here, is that I remember, when I was working in, starting campaigns for clients, I remember hearing a story about a pizza shop owner, I think it was out in California, and, they had started a Google ad campaign and they set it up nationally and literally burned through tens of thousands of dollars in one night because they set it up inaccurately, targeting the entire US rather than their area. So these things can happen, right? If you don't know what the interface is going to do for you and you just try to ham-hand it, then you're going to end up with some serious implications from that. So for us in the professional field, it's important for our clients to understand why they need to use us. And there are times that you can do it yourself. And actually, I started this article with, what are some of the times that you can just honestly do it yourself? So if you're, dealing with a small monthly budget, and you really just want to make sure that, you have some presence out there. If you're trying to learn it yourself, if you really have the time, just to set it up and let Google do the work, then that's an environment. And you don't have any competition, right? If you're in an environment where nobody else is bidding and you're the only one doing it, then, it makes sense just to do it yourself. These are pretty rare circumstances. And again, most of the industries, have competition. Most people are doing some sort of advertising online. And even nationally, you're going to have people that are across the country that may target your area. So, like even party rental, like there's lead aggregator companies that are out there that are bidding for your local area. They'll take that, ingest that, and then sell the leads to the local businesses. That still happens. So, even if you don't think you have competition in the local area, you probably do. So it's pretty rare that there's going to be a time that you're going to have, the time, the small budget, and the zero competition. So typically in this environment of 2026, you're going to need somebody to help you. And I've been doing this a long time, right? So one of the things that, again, I see a lot of when people try to do it themselves is that they're leaking leads and budget and money, right? Google, if you've spent any time in it, and again, this is kind of a common joke in our industry, is that like Google will give you a lot of advice, and typically it's going to say to spend more money. So if you go into the Google ad environment and you do it yourself, you're going to hear and see Google say, here's your number one recommendation this week, spend more money, right? They love taking the money. They're going to then, bid you up higher. And not always is that a good thing, right? So sometimes Google is going to go in there and say, here are relevant keywords, and we're just going to put you out there. So it's called broad matching. So if you broad match every single keyword, and let's say you're a roofing repair company in Doylestown, you may come up for these other terms that have nothing to do with you. I have a client right now that I'm managing, and we see stuff coming up in New Jersey. So I'm actively going in there and negating that and getting rid of that. But they're in Philadelphia, right? So, they're not servicing people, across the river. So it's really important that you, again, understand how the bidding mechanisms are set up so that you're not spending, potentially $15, $20, $100. If you're an attorney, some of these keywords are extremely expensive, right? So this is, again, why it's important to have somebody that's going in there, looking at it and auditing, what's going on with your campaign, so that you're not wasting your budget and making sure that you're not showing up for things that are not relevant for you. You need to make sure that you're accurately spending dollars to where people are at. So the understanding that in 2026 that there's a lot of things that are happening behind. AI is a big piece of this, right? It's no more like you're just going to go out there, set it up, and let it run. There's a lot of machinations that are happening within the platforms that are really going to be something that you need to watch and monitor, and even just understand where they're at. If you go into the Google ad environment, like the platform itself has a lot of bells and whistles, which is good for me because I know where to go and I know what I'm doing, and I can go in there and I can look at things. But if you've never been in it, it's going to take you a long time, and time is money, right? Not only just from the amount of budget you're spending, but your competitors are, if they're already out there doing it, they're way ahead of you. So now you have to do some catch up. So, and there are things that, again, outside of just, running the Google ad campaign that need to be set up. You want to be tracking the conversions, and there's different things that you need to do to set that up, ways you're plugging it into Google Analytics. So if you don't even have Google Analytics set up and you don't know how to work that, you should not be getting into Google Ads before you have all those pieces set up. So again, I help out with a lot of this stuff. And then when it comes to targeting, again, you can get pretty specific within the Google ad environment, but you also want to plug and play that into the other areas of your advertising. So, Facebook and display advertising, and here we talk about geofencing, targeting specific areas and neighborhoods, and making sure that your advertising is working across the spectrum, not just even Google, but these other things. If you're only ever going to do Google, well, that's probably the most important, but if you're not driving people to that Google environment through your social media, through your SEO work, your blogging, your other digital advertising like geofencing, like if you're not doing those things, then you're really just not making the full weight behind Google Ads work for you. So, these are things that I'm setting up and targeting personas as well as geographically targeting to make sure that you're enhancing your marketing and reaching the audience where they're at and making sure that it's converting. So again, as I've talked about, I've done this a long time. I'm going to have to update this next year because it'll be 20 years that I've been in this. So there's always changes, right? My job is to stay plugged into what's going on and learn. I've got a lot of campaigns that I've run a lot of categories. I have the ability to really kind of learn from different ways that other people are running their campaigns, speak to other professionals, see other campaigns that are running, and be able to take that and ingest it and work on my clients' campaigns so that we know what's working, and making sure that we're using that data, using those impressions to make sure that we're targeting the right areas and getting the right response. So again, I have a lot of reviews. You can go read them at your leisure. But really, again, when I work with clients, it's about that long-term relationship, right? I've worked with clients almost some of my long-term clients. I'm almost at 20 years with them, right? And so that evolution of that relationship has helped me, help and guide them from their business practice, their marketing practice, and just help them out with everything that's going on. And when we talk about local, it is important to work with somebody local, right? There's a lot of agencies that are out there, and they'll take your money. But do they know the difference between these different towns, right? Do they know the difference between, again, going across state lines? In Philadelphia, there's a huge river. Like, nobody from Jersey is coming to Philadelphia. Nobody from Philadelphia typically goes to Jersey unless they're living over there. And so understanding the geography is critical. Understanding the towns in those areas is critical as well. I remember way back when, we had a client that I onboarded, and they were upset with their previous agency, and they had used Chester as a targeted town. Well, the agency didn't know this, but Chester was, a really heavily searched area, so they targeted that. But it wasn't ideal for the client that was, again, looking to target the area. So they were getting, all these visits from Chester, and they didn't want to take it because they didn't want to go there. So again, understanding the local market is critical, and then being able to paste in all these other things. I had a conversation with one of my networking groups about it. Why is, Google Ads and SEO together so critical, because Google doesn't show you everything in Google organic, right? You can run Ahrefs and SEMrush and all these other platforms, but the data is not going to be as good as if you go to Google Ads, run a campaign, learn what people are clicking on. Again, going back to the conversion tracking all that, and then being able to knit that together so that your SEO gets better, right? If you can learn from your paid advertising and apply it to your SEO, it's going to lift your entire website up into these better areas. And then piecing together things like geofencing and social media and connected TV, streaming audio. Again, not everybody does all the things, but I have the ability through the almost 20 years that I've been doing this, be able to plug and play these different pieces together to, again, accelerate what you're doing in Google Ads. Pretty much everything is driving back to that website, right? So if you don't have a good website, I can help there and make sure that we have the ability to have a good conversion spot for your traffic. So if you've ever had questions about this, if you're again, just not confident about doing it, maybe you've done it and not had success, right? Let's talk about how we can actually incorporate Google advertising into your strategy and make sure that it's working for you, and then piggybacking all these other things. So if you have questions, reach out to me. If you want to do an SEO audit, like this is, again, a good starting point, because then it'll tell you, what you want to target from an SEO and then search engine marketing perspective. So you can fill this out, you can do a report, it'll trigger it over to me, and we can start working on a plan that's going to bring you success. So again, thank you for taking the time to walk through this. Please, if you have time, fill this out, and we can discuss a plan and a path forward for you. So thank you, and God bless.